to the Glam Metal Interview Series, presented by RockMusicStar.com, with host Thomas S. Orwart Jr.
Hey everyone, it's Thomas from GlamMetal.com with episode number 17 of the Glam Metal Interview Series. It is February 27th, and I just finished an interview with original Faster Pussycat guitarist-songwriter Brent Muscat. During this interview, Brent discusses the first three classic Faster Pussycat records, touring with bands such as Kiss, Alice Cooper, David Lee Roth, and Motorhead, and much, much more. So here he is, Brent Muscat. Hey Glam Metalheads, welcome to the Glam Metal Interview Series, episode number 17. And look who we have today with us, Brent Muscat, formerly the band Faster Pussycat, a true glam metal legend. Brent, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, just waking up, so yeah, doing good.
Oh, awesome. Good to hear. Well, hopefully I won't be having to ask this question much longer because I'm so sick of this pandemic crap that looks like we'll finally, there's some light at the end of the tunnel here, but it's been pretty much going on for like a year now. What kind of impact did the pandemic have on you both professionally and personally?
Trying to think. Well, it was funny. I was following it from the very beginning, and I can remember when it was like, I can remember when there was like just one or two cases that just hit America. But yeah, I was following it and kind of paying attention, and I've been following kind of I watch these virologists on YouTube, a podcast they have, and I've been learning a lot about, the virus and vaccines and all these things. And it's good to hear actual scientists and like people that know about viruses actually talking about it, because there's so much other nonsense out there, and it's been so politicized from both sides that it's nice to hear real science talk about it. And that, and to know more about it made it less scary, right, to me. So that's been kind of nice that I've learned a lot about viruses this year. And I think there's a lot of good, like you said, light at the end of the tunnel. I think, nobody's really talking, but I mean, to create a vaccine within a year is like the fastest it's ever been done. It's actually a miracle to be able to create these vaccines in less than a year. Typically in the past, it's taken 5 to 10 years to create a vaccine. But with the technology we have, and of course, this pandemic, we didn't have that much time. I mean, there was really a real rush to create these things, which is amazing. So I've been watching that too. I've been watching like the vaccines, how they're rolling out. And like you said, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of the numbers are coming down as far as infection rates and hospitalizations. And I'm looking forward to getting back to normal. And this summer, I'm hoping at least, by maybe late summer, things will get back to somewhat normal. And maybe by fall, I think by fall and next Christmas, I'm hoping things will be pretty much back to normal, completely.
Yeah. I just read an article today about Live Nation thinking that they might be able to, by summer, get back to 75% and 100% capacity in some of the venues, which I think is really a bit overly optimistic. But, or they might
hopefully by January, by winter. This winter was really bad with, I guess, the surge of viruses, the uptick. But I think by next winter, things will be very hopeful, and so that would be good for me. I mean, the impact it had on me, of course, in March, I was playing, about twice a week out in Vegas at different, venues. It shut down pretty much in March. So April, I just sat, and sat at home and you know, it was so new, nobody really knew how long everybody, you know, we're going to have to sit in the indoors. But, you know, it impacted me. You know, of course, I stopped playing and I sat at home and gained some weight. And just like everybody else, kind of was out of work for a while. But since then, they've kind of opened things back up halfway and then closed them down again and then opened. So I've played during this last year, probably average maybe about once a month I've played, where usually I'm playing probably 8 times a month at least,
Yeah.
a couple times a week. And then I just played out in about an hour outside of Vegas, a place called Pahrump, Nevada. I played out there and that was really cool. And out there, it's funny because it's such a small community out there and very like not a big city. So it's just funny. Nobody wears a mask and it's just like, and I'm not recommending that, but it's just such a different thing where, you know, here in Vegas, everywhere I go, I'm wearing a mask if I go in anywhere, and everybody's wearing a mask here in Vegas. But out there, it was just like you go into the place where we're playing, it's like nobody's wearing a mask and people are congregating, and I'm wearing a mask. But then you feel like it's really funny how that kind of social pressure is like when nobody's wearing a mask, you feel kind of dumb when you're the only one wearing a mask.
Yeah.
But the numbers out there, you know, I guess because they don't really have many cases out there, you know. But I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to getting the vaccine so that I could sort of just not worry about it, because I don't want to get sick, you know. And I'm at the age now where, you know, I have to be careful. I'm not really 20 years old anymore, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm at an age that I think if I got it, I would have to worry a little bit, you know. So I'm looking forward to just having some protection, not having to worry. I think that would relieve a little bit of the anxiety, you know. And then of course, it'll be nice when they open up all the live venues out here and I can, you know, play again, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Which is starting. I think they're starting to do that, you know.
Right. Yeah. For the people that don't know, why don't you tell us about the bands that you're currently playing in, and you were kind of ahead of the curve as far as people from LA moving out to Vegas. You've been in Vegas for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, I was one of the I always like to say I was like one of the pioneers, you know, rock pioneers out here. I was coming out here a lot. I had a friend out here and I was coming out visiting him a lot, and I was going to a lot of bigger shows, you know, not so much rock shows, but just like, you know, anything, like if Charlie Daniels played live, or if anybody, even Burt Bacharach, or like, I was just going to some shows and looking at Vegas. And before I moved out here, I thought, you know, this town would be great if it had like a rock scene. And there wasn't much of a rock scene out here. I mean, in the past, Vegas has had times where they've had a little bit of a rock scene or they've had rock clubs, but I thought it would be really nice to have like a real rock scene where people, you know, a community where people knew each other and people got together and jammed. And so I thought, man, this town is ready for that. So I moved out here and started doing that. Probably moved out here 2004, and I started playing live a lot. And the band, before it was Original Sin, we called ourselves Sin City Sinners. Mm-hmm. And we started playing once a week on a Tuesday. And it was great because on a Tuesday night, there's really nothing to do. And so, you know, on weekends, there's a lot of stuff to do out here. But Tuesday night was perfect because a lot of the people that were, a lot of the entertainers in town too that had shows, you know, Tuesday nights, they're dark, where their show's kind of off. It's their off night. So it was great. So we'd have guys from like Blue Man Group and different shows, people coming in to see us, and even like showgirls and stuff would come in like after, you know, on their day off, and people from different casinos and worked at different casinos. So we got lucky that people saw us and we built it up, and we had a lot of people jam with us. And before we knew it, we went from a small club, the Dive Bar, to play in the bigger casinos. And we were one of the first bands to actually be able to go and play original music in a casino setting, because usually in a casino setting it was really for like cover bands or or bands that were like big, like already famous. So for us, we were one of the first bands to be able to actually break in to the casinos playing some original music. Of course, we played a lot of covers too, but it was cool. Like I remember a lot of the casino people going, you're the first band to get in the showroom and actually be able to play original music.
Yeah, yeah,
So
like
it was
like you
nice.
like you said, you were definitely a pioneer as far as that goes. I mean,
Yeah. And
like
since then, the scene, like Vamp, there's a nice rock club here called Vamp that opened up, and a lot of like more local stuff. And there's a lot more clubs to play, and casinos are a lot more willing, I think, to have rock bands. So yeah, we did that, and then Todd, our singer for Original Sin, got busy with Slash.
right,
And while he was out on tour, I basically started another band called Saints of Las Vegas.
right, okay.
So when Todd's available, he comes in and we do, once or twice a year, bigger shows. And then as far as playing like weekly, that's what I do with my band, Saints of Las Vegas.
Now the Saints of Las Vegas have a CD out, or a couple songs, and a CD called Unplugged in Belgium that was released in 2019, right?
That was kind of a weird thing. My singer went over. We have a friend in Belgium. My singer and my bass player at the time, they went over to Belgium and just recorded some stuff with a guy. I wouldn't really consider that our CD. It's more just like something they did, like a side project,
I see. Okay.
But I think the guy in Belgium kind of used the name just to sort of sell CDs, I think. But we have some original music online that we've recorded here in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But the Belgium stuff, yeah, I wasn't even really a part of that.
Oh,
and it was like, I didn't even know it was coming. It was like all of a sudden it was out, and I'm like, but I didn't really care, because it's sort of like, I don't know. It was like these days, it's like, it's not like it was in the 80s. You know what I mean? Music just kind of people just kind of put music out, and it's more of a fan service. It's not as much like a money making thing. So in the 80s, I mean, people were a lot more serious about, 80s and 90s, I guess, but people were more serious about, like, because it was big labels and everything was big, and when you put out a CD, you would sell, if you were semi-successful, you'd sell hundreds of thousands of copies, where nowadays people don't sell physical copies. It's more they look at streams.
Yeah.
And it's like people, we got 20,000 streams, and that's a big deal, where like back in the 80s, you couldn't have lived off, if you sold 20,000 copies of a record, it was a failure. Nowadays, if you can get 20,000 people just listening to it for free, that's like a huge success. So things are really different, and it's more like, it's hard to, I think with music, it's harder to make money as far as that kind of recording thing and putting out music. I think the way most bands, I think, make money these days is like playing live.
Yeah.
And ticket sales, or and actually people maybe buying t-shirts. Maybe you could sell physical items at the show or online a little bit, but it's kind of a whole different world these days.
Yeah, the CD is basically just like another T-shirt, just another piece of merchandise to sell at the
and I mean, people, they don't need to buy it really unless they just want the item, because they could just download the music.
Yeah. Well, let's that's a kind of a good segue into the glory days of music, and I want to go back to the beginning of Faster Pussycat. I think it's a pretty fascinating story, especially your story, because you were very young when you formed Faster Pussycat in I believe it was 1986 that Faster Pussycat was formed. Is that correct?
We probably formed it in 85.
Oh, 85. Okay.
Yeah, 85, 86. Yeah, about that time, probably end of 85. I mean, we were probably playing in a band in 85 at least. We probably got signed in 86.
Hmm. Now,
Um,
you were still in high school
yeah.
while you were forming Faster Pussycat. Can you just briefly tell us the steps on how you formed the band? What led to you forming Faster Pussycat?
Um, I'd been playing in different bands before that. I had while I was in high school, I had a lot of high school bands, but my probably around my senior year of high school, I started seeing, I'm trying to think. Junior and senior, my last couple of years of high school, I started playing out at clubs with like older guys. I was in a punk band called Corpse with like kind of a famous California punk guy named Rudy, who was in a band called the Stains. They were kind of like semi-popular punk band, but I'd play out with him and play clubs. And then when I think my senior year, I started playing with my brother and some of his older friends in a band called Shanghai,
Yeah, your brother
which
Todd.
was, yeah, Todd Muscat. And I started playing with him. And that band was closer to that kind of Guns N' Roses. I like to say like sleaze rock is a good
Yeah.
description of it. I think that's better than hair metal, but for what we were doing at the time, I think sleaze rock kind of says what it was, describes it pretty well. But that band I was playing with around my senior year of high school, and we played a few clubs. So I was already playing out at some clubs, and I had my middle brother Corey's fake ID, so I didn't really have any problems kind of playing these 21 and over clubs. Even though I was underage, if they carded me, I had my brother Corey's like ID, and we look enough alike that I would pass for him. And then to make a long story short, I think me and Mark, we were in Shanghai. Michael's from Faster Pussycat, first drummer, and he got kicked out for some reason, and then I think I got kicked out, and it was weird, really weird. There was not really any reason for us to get kicked out other than that band. They started getting some money from some mafia guy, like he started investing money, almost like laundering money. And the guitar player in Shanghai, Taz, basically wanted to keep all the money and not share it. So he just kicked us out.
Oh,
kind
wow.
of took all the money, he bought everything he wanted to buy, and then kind of reformed the band again,
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
really stupid stuff,
But it worked out well for you.
well, yeah, because I could remember I had some friends who introduced me to Tammy right at that time that I stopped playing with Shanghai. And I met Tammy, and pretty much right away I met him. I hung out, stayed at his house. We started writing songs, and we put the band together within a few days. We met Greg. We drove over to Greg Still's house. We wrote music with him. We had Mark. We had some different bass players, and we had even Kelly Nichols from LA Guns at one point in the beginning. Yeah. And I can remember one of our first shows was at the Whiskey, and Guns N' Roses was headlining, and it was really funny because Faster Pussycat played, and Faster Pussycat and Shanghai opened for Guns N' Roses at the Whiskey. And I remember the guys from Shanghai, or Taz, who had kicked me out, was like, "Hey, do you want to be back in?" I'm like, "Go screw yourself. I got this new band,
Right.
Faster Pussycat." And I already thought, like, even at that point, Faster Pussycat was already something special. You could feel the chemistry. And I already knew we were like doing better, already. We just put the band together, and there was just something more organic and just sort of like I said, the chemistry felt better with Faster Pussycat. So we had something, and you could tell too, because the crowd, we got a better reaction from the crowd, and we even had a bigger following right away. So it helped that Tammy was working at a clothing store on Melrose Avenue called Retail Slut. and we'd see a lot of rock. It was kind of a rock and roll clothing store.
Mm-hmm.
And all day long people would come in, and I would sit there and help him out, and he'd buy me a hamburger because I had nothing to do. I was just a kid, you know, and I'd sit there and help him out. And all day long, if we had a show, we'd pass out flyers. So we had a really cool way to kind of promote the band.
Yeah.
You know, all day long, 5 days a week while he was working during the day, he just would say, "Hey, come see us tonight at the Roxy or at the Whiskey." And so pretty quickly we had built a nice little local following, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember what the very first song that you wrote with Faster Pussycat was?
Cat House. I could remember going to Greg Still's house, and Tammy had this idea for Cat House, but right now it's like a 1-4-5 standard kind of blues chord progression, you know, bluesy kind of song. But Tammy, when you had it at the beginning, it was half steps, and it was really weird. It was like, and Tammy's a funny guy. A lot of his stuff he writes is very like half step and kind of minor sounding, darker, you know, half steps, where the whole step blues pattern is a lot more brighter and just kind of more kind of that rock and roll, like Stones and Aerosmith type vibe. So, and I was into Aerosmith, and that was part of our thing. So yeah, Cat House was like one of the first ones I can remember changing it. I mean, Greg and I were like, "Hey, why don't we play it like here?" And it sounded way better.
Yeah.
So we kind of co-wrote that together. That was one of the first songs I can remember with Tammy. But yeah, there was a lot. I mean, that first album, a lot of that stuff was just sitting in Tammy's living room or in his bedroom, just on guitars, kind of unplugged, just kind of strumming through stuff and going, "Yeah, that sounds good. You know, this sounds good." And then, you know, a lot of it was just, you know, a lot of that stuff was co-written, but even a lot of it was like, if you had the idea, you got the credit for it, even though we'd take it in the room and we deconstruct it and put it back together, rearrange it, and kind of change chords. Some of the stuff looking back, you know, Tammy would have the credit just because he'd bring the idea in, even though after we got to it, it would be a totally different song, you know.
Right. Now, when did Elektra Records get involved? Was there a bidding war for the band at all, or was Elektra pretty much the first label that approached you?
Well, LA was heating up as far as just the LA scene, and it was like it was started heating up. Poison got signed, and then we had got some offers from small labels, and we turned them down because we just thought like we were pretty cocky, and we were very like kind of one-track mind, and we thought we wanted to be on a big label. And it was funny when we talked about all the labels, you know, there was Warner Brothers, Geffen, you know, there were so many labels, but there, you know, there's probably a dozen labels that we were talking about being on. But out of all the labels, it was funny because we thought Elektra was the one we wanted to be on. And Guns N' Roses got signed, and we were sort of like, everybody was like, all the labels were basically looking for that kind of sleaze rock, glam rock, but, you know, new band. And we were lucky because our manager, we got Vicky Hamilton as a manager, and she managed Guns N' Roses. So she helped get them signed. So she was already speaking to all the labels. So it's great because she was like, "Hey, come see my new band, Faster Pussycat." So I can remember at the time, you know, for a few months while we were playing clubs, there were labels coming, and we were courting labels, you know, like a guy courts a girl, you know, takes them on date. We were courting the labels. I guess that's what they called it at the time. And labels would come backstage and, hey, we like the show. And they were just kind of sniffing around. They were looking at us, listening to our songs, probably a lot looking at our audience. Like if it was sold out, and the audience is excited. There's that social thing, like, oh, everybody else likes them, maybe we should sign them.
Yeah.
So we started getting interest, and we started getting from there. We started getting like meetings where like somebody from Atlantic or whatever would say, hey, come up to the office, and we were really cocky. I could remember LA Guns got signed about a year after us, but their label at the time, it was funny. I could remember we met before LA Guns was even on their radar. They were looking at us, and the label brought us up to the in an office, and we were so cocky. I can remember sitting down in front of the guy and just going, hey, we're here. If you want to sign us, but we're going to get signed with you or without you. Yeah. I was that cocky, and we kind of knew it because LA was so hot. We thought like there's a good chance we're going to get signed pretty quick because we were selling out. We were doing really good. We were selling out shows. We had a great audience. We had a bunch of cool songs. We thought, we had the look. So the guy was like, well, kind of like, we were kind of like, hey, it's like, sign us or you lose. It's like your loss. I was kind of like, and we were really cocky. We're just like, hey, if you don't sign us, somebody else is, and you're going to lose out. I was like that. Yeah. We weren't like trying to kiss their ass. It was like, we're kind of like, tell us what you're going to do for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we weren't begging for a deal at the time, but the guy dragged his feet, and I remember we ended up getting signed with Elektra, and I can remember hearing we had some other friends some friends that kind of worked in there, and they said, oh, he got in trouble for not signing you, and he's looking for a band. And like, I know it's kind of mean, but at the time when LA Guns first got signed, they were kind of like the I always like to say it's like one of those high school dance, and they were like the last girl to get picked to dance, kind of.
Right.
At the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody, one point, all the good bands got kind of picked up, and then at one point in LA, like if you were a band, pretty much they were just signing up bands.
And, yeah, like in '88 and '89. Yeah, I remember a lot of those bands got signed. Like MCA was even signing bands. They were notorious for signing rock bands. I mean, they signed a few.
But what they would do though, which really sucked, is like when we got signed, in the first wave of signing like Poison, Guns N' Roses, and us, and trying to think of, there's a few other bands that didn't make it big that got signed around that time, like Jet Boy. But we at least got to they signed us and they let us make records.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, this is the first wave. We're the first ones to get it. Let's make records and put them out on the radio. And we got to tour. We're like a year after, and LA Guns got lucky at least because they got signed a year later, but they were at least got to make their record and tour and everything. Mm-hmm. But there was a ton of bands, like you said, 88, 89, they were signing bands and just not doing anything with, just signing them just to snatch them up, and almost like seeing what they would do on their own. Like, we're going to just sign this band and see what they do in the clubs or locally. They would just, and not do anything. Like, so many of those bands just got signed, and they used to say like, oh, they got signed, it was a tax write-off for the record.
Oh, yeah. Company. Yeah, there's so many of them. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, the record came out on July 7th, 1987. Great record. The first Faster Pussycat. One of my favorite songs on there is a song called Smash Alley. I think it's such an amazing riff in there. Can you just tell us briefly about that song in particular?
Well, there's so many other songs. Like, there's other songs. It's a little bit of I would say kind of a derivative, Mm-hmm. I forget what it is, but there's the famous song like
like Peter Gunn,
spy song,
Peter Gunn.
One of those. Yeah, Peter. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a derivative, but that was one of the ones I can remember Tammy working on and having the lyrics, and it was, yeah, it's a real cool song. A lot of that stuff is good because I always say, if you want to hear what's Hollywood Sunset Strip sounded like in '86, that record is very good because that's the actual songs we were playing at the clubs.
Yeah.
And we were lucky because they signed us and just go do your thing. Where a lot of other bands, they'd sign them and they go, oh, you got to write hit songs now. Where we were able to just put out everything. All the music on our first record was like stuff we were playing in the clubs.
Yeah.
Where I can remember like Jet Boy, I think part of the reason why they didn't break big is because when they got signed, they had somebody at Elektra going, okay, now you guys got to go write Bon Jovi song. You know, it's like, what's the point of like, if you're going to sign us, why are you going to try to make us like some kind of pop rock band when we're the sleazy, you know what I mean? We're this Hollywood sleazy band. Let us do what we do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys had some pretty good tours also for that record. I saw you for the first time when you opened for Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley. And was that the first major tour that Faster Pussycat went on?
One of the first, I think the first, yeah, I can remember Alice Cooper. But I think before that, I think the very first one was Ace Frehley and Y&T.
Okay. Yeah. So how was the
Alice Cooper was one of, I mean, the first few months we were out, Alice Cooper is definitely one of those bands we were out with.
Yeah. Well, what do you remember from that particular tour?
From Alice Cooper one?
Yeah. Alice Cooper, Ace Frehley tour, yeah.
Alice is a really cool guy, probably one of the coolest, just genuine, authentic, you know, and just nice, smart. He was always very generous. Like I said, without Alice Cooper, his big reason I think we were able to make it is because he heard us and thought we were cool. And those guys, I mean, the thing about the bands back then too, like bands like Alice Cooper, or when we went out with Kiss, they'd actually pick their opening bands, like they'd listen to them and they were involved. They're like, hey, we like this kind of new thing that's happening. We're going to bring that out. Mm-hmm. So Alice Cooper's very, in that way, I think he's got good taste in music because he's got an ear where he listens to stuff and goes, hey, this is cool. You know, it might not be the best technically, but it's got there's something there to it, you know?
Yeah.
There, you know, it's definitely some kind of new scene happening. And I think Alice Cooper recognized that, brought us out with him. So I remember him being really cool. I remember he was doing all the theatrical stuff. So that was really fun to watch all that. Like he'd chop his head off and he'd have some like hot girls, like part of the show. And, you know, it was fun just watching his show. I remember that. And it was just great to get out there. We were so different from a lot of music. People hadn't seen that whole LA Sunset Strip, sleaze metal, glam rock stuff yet. So we had a bit of a hard time, but it made us a better band. It toughened us up, you know?
Yeah, I remember at the time, and there was a buzz building about the whole LA scene because Guns N' Roses' Appetite was starting to get, Welcome to the Jungle was starting to get some airplay on I think MTV and some of the other video stations. And so there was kind of like a buzz, like, hey, there's something cool going on. And I remember seeing that show. You guys were the first band to play, and you guys just like you decimated the place. I mean, it was just like, wow, you guys were just friggin' incredible.
Well, we were lucky. You know, at the time we got signed and then we got a manager. Vicky was great. She got us signed. But once we got signed, we needed a manager to sort of take us a step higher. And we got a good manager, Warren Entner, who managed like Quiet Riot and Angel and had a lot of experience. He was in a band himself. He was in a band in like the 60s and 70s called the Grassroots. So he really knew the music industry inside and out, and he was able to get us on tour, and he knew to just put us out there and make us work. That was going to make us a better band, and that's what he did. He just got us out on tour, and I appreciate, because like opening up for, these bands, Ace Frehley, Y&T, or Alice Cooper, even though we might not have totally fit, or maybe people didn't know what we were yet, he's like, go out there and play. And he goes, if people boo, just keep going.
Right.
Keep doing it. They're going to see you eventually in magazines or on MTV. They're going to see Guns N' Roses. Just keep going. And he put us out there and made us work. And without him, we probably wouldn't have, everybody, Vicky got us signed, but Warren, once we switched management, he really took us to that next level, helped us go from being a signed band to actually going out and working a lot,
Right. Yeah, and in addition to Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley, you also played. You went on tour with David Lee Roth.
Yeah, that's when things started changing. Where I can remember, like when we were out with Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley and Y&T, those first tours, we were still kind of unknown. So when people saw us, it was more of like, what the hell's that,
Mm-hmm.
But what changed is by the time we went out with David Lee Roth, we already started getting in magazines and getting on MTV a little bit, like Headbangers Ball at least.
Right.
So by the time we went out with David Lee Roth, people kind of knew what Guns N' Roses were, and Poison. And that helped a lot, because when we came out, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. This is like a band like Guns N' Roses or Poison, So people were familiar with it. So I can remember things really changed for us at that time, where the crowds just became very more accepting. And I think David Lee Roth's crowd too, I think we fit with David Lee Roth's crowd more, because David Lee Roth's crowd is more of a party crowd. They're just into, like, David Lee Roth was known for partying and girls. And it was really like there was a lot more girls there. And when they saw a band like us, they were a lot more accepting of, like, okay, this is just like a fun kind of sleazy rock band, and they knew what we were. And we really felt like, okay, we're starting to make it, because people are into it and cheering. And, it was definitely like I can remember the first couple shows we played with David Lee Roth, me and Greg, we were playing live on the stage down in Florida, one of the first shows. And we looked at each other and kind of gave each other a look and nodded. And we knew, we had both said, like, this is it. We're getting popular. And this is kind of what we've been working for,
It was almost as if you were on David Lee Roth tour to, like, actually boost tickets, whereas Alice Cooper, you're kind of there because Alice Cooper picked you because you're cool.
Yeah, because we were such a new band, we were unproven. Alice Cooper picked us because we were cool. But yeah, you're right. When we were on the David Lee Roth tour, we'd been out touring, and we probably sold we probably had some songs on the radio. There was more of a reason to get, like you said, we were picked for David Lee Roth, because it would help sell tickets, probably.
Yeah. And you also did some shows with Motorhead too on that during those years, right, for the first record, right?
Yeah, I saw, it was funny, Greg Steele, the guitar player, I follow him on Instagram. He had put up a flyer. It was Alice Cooper, Motorhead, and then us opening in LA at Long Beach Arena, I think, down in Long Beach. But I can remember that show, and that was a tough one, because playing with a band like Motorhead, the fans are a lot more, it's not like the David Lee Roth crowd. The David Lee Roth crowd is a lot more easygoing and fun and just ready to party, where Motorhead fans are there because they are, like, more serious about the metal, and they're there to rock out. They're not really there to party. They're there to kind of like headbang, to really get into it, So, but those tougher shows made us a tougher band, and made us, our attitude, even if you listen from the first record to the second record, you could see we got a little darker and a little tougher.
Yep.
And a little bit better. I mean, musically, we were more seasoned, it had more experience. So I think it made us a better band, those tours and playing with bands like Motorhead, because it's just like, it's not like playing opening for Poison or playing with, like, Warren, where it's more party. It's more dark, and Alice Cooper and Motorhead, those bands were a little bit more, almost considered more serious or technical or,
Yeah, kind of like knock you out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. But it was good
So,
for us. Every band we toured with really helped us, become a better band.
yeah. And then on September 6th, 1989, you released the Wake Me When It's Over record, which was very successful. Had the huge hit House of Pain, which is an iconic, I don't know if you want to call it power ballad, but one of those songs that,
It was great because everybody's putting out ballads, but every ballad back then was about like a love song or, you know what I mean? Or
yeah,
heartbroken song about a girl. Where House of Pain was different in the way that even though it was kind of a power ballad, it wasn't really a love ballad.
right.
And that was one of the first at the time. I mean, it paved the way for a lot of ballads came out afterwards that were kind of power ballads that were not like that. Bands would release songs that were a little more serious, but that was one of the first at the time. And that was cool because it made it different. It wasn't just like another cheesy love song. It was something kind of serious and
Yeah,
something a lot of people, we got so much reaction to it because so many people could kind of relate, you know.
yeah.
Um,
When you guys were writing that song, did you realize quickly into it that was going to be a huge hit, or did it catch you by surprise?
well, when we wrote it originally, we knew the music was good and Tammy had different lyrics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wasn't anything. It might have been a love ballad. It might have been a love ballad at the time, but he had different lyrics. And I can remember we were writing for that second record. But our management and us, I think our management too, I think we kind of told Tammy, this is like too good of a song to have just like stupid lyrics,
Right.
that
Yeah.
don't mean anything. And we kind of told Tammy that and kind of said, go home and do your homework, go home and write something that's worthy of the music. And he knocked it out of the park. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
he went back and dug deep and into his emotions. And I mean, he wrote the lyrics for House of Pain, which is like a personal story. And that's what's good about it, is that it's kind of real. It's something personal to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he rewrote the lyrics, and we got that, and that was just by saying, hey, go back and rewrite it, because we knew the music was good,
Yeah. Yeah, that's such an iconic song. I mean, it is one of the top songs of the 80s in my opinion. And I didn't really, when it first came out, I didn't really like listen to the lyrics. Here's
Yeah,
the chorus, but like when I did, years later when I did listen to the lyrics, I was like, wow, this stuff is pretty deep, it's pretty
yeah.
emotional stuff.
Well, and then we had the director who made the video went on to be a huge like Hollywood director who made like the Armageddon and The Rock and Pearl Harbor. I forget the guy's name now.
Wow.
But I mean, he's a huge director. But that's one of his early things he worked on before he got really big. It was such a great video, though. I'm sure he used it as like when you're going to do other projects, you usually have like a reel of work, almost like a portfolio, and they call it your reel. And on your reel, you have your commercial. When you're small director, you probably only have music videos and some commercials before you get big and go to big, huge movies. So on his reel, I'm sure House of Pain was on his reel and helped him get some of these big, huge movies.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I mean, you're right. It was a great video.
Yeah, and he made a great video, and that helped make it. It was kind of really drive the story, and that was great. And but it was, that was I can remember when we made the video, and when we first saw the edited version and the finished version of the video, Tammy actually cried. So it was like,
Yeah.
we knew, like, I mean, when he cried, like, watching it, it's like, okay, we kind of knew we had something, you know what I mean? Like, we kind of knew that was going to be a pretty big hit,
Yeah, the sound of the band also changed a little bit on this record too. I mean, you went from like a sleazer sound to more like like a more like a blues, maybe Stones influenced, Faces influenced sound. Was that just the growth of you as musicians, or was it kind of like a predetermined type of thing to like move in that direction?
There was a combination. Like I said, those tours changed us, made us a little bit of a heart. I mean, opening up for like bands like, you know, Alice Cooper, Motorhead, and Ace Frehley, those kind of influenced us. Guns N' Roses' first album, you know, our first albums came out the same day. Guns N' Roses and then Faster Pussycat was released at the same time. And when Appetite came out, it was so like, I mean, we had our niche, but for us, we looked at Appetite like that set the bar.
Yeah.
This is what we have to compete against. So we had to kind of dig deeper in writing, I think. And a lot of the first album, a lot of that stuff, Tammy had the idea. I mean, some of it, like No Room for Emotion, that was my thing. And if you listen to it, that is very Faces, bluesy.
Yeah. There's definitely some influences like that on the first record, right?
Yeah. So I think that second record, it allowed me and Greg wrote more. We were involved a little bit more in the music than the first record.
Yeah.
Even though we were definitely involved in the music, but I think when we wrote that second record, we were really involved. Even if Tammy had an idea, we were really involved from the beginning. Where like if Tammy had an idea and it was like I said, if it was weird, I could go right away, hey Tammy, instead of doing it this half step thing, why don't you try it a little bit, this, you know, 1-4-5 like bluesy thing, and it'll make more sense, you know?
Yeah.
And you would like it more too, because you're into New York Dolls and you're into Aerosmith. I was really into, you know, Aerosmith. He's into Stones, but the same influences. But we were a lot more involved. So like I said, even if Tammy had an idea, we were able to guide it from the beginning. Where the first album, some of those songs Tammy brought in, you know, but this was more like we were all part of it, and we kind of knew where we were going a little bit more, and we knew what our influence, you know, our influences are Aerosmith, Stones, New York Dolls, and throw that in with punk rock. You know, we were very punk rock influenced. Billy Idol, you know, Ramones, Sex Pistols. And so we kind of, and then Hanoi Rocks, we were into all that glam stuff, T-Rex. So we kind of knew what our influences were. And then we knew like, okay, here's what we released, but GNR put out Appetite. And Appetite, they spent 4 times as much money and 4 times as much time making that record. So that kind of really set the bar. So we knew like, okay, we need to like go, that's what is like the competition, you know?
Yeah,
it's
right.
like, this is so heavy and we're a tougher band, we're better players. So that really influenced our playing, you know, as far as like, we're going to have to really dig deeper. That's why even when we wrote House of Pain, we made Tammy go rewrite the lyrics, because it was like, we knew what we were up against, you know?
Yeah.
We knew that just some cheesy love lyrics is not going to cut it, you know?
Right. No, that was the right decision to make, because that's, like I said, that song is so iconic right now. Now on that tour, you played with Motley Crue, but I always thought, I remember back then, I was surprised that you guys didn't play more with Motley Crue, since they were on the same record label, and Dr. Feelgood came out like, I think pretty much maybe not the same date as September 6th, 1989, but pretty close to it. So I always thought that Faster Pussycat and Motley Crue would have been a really good bill, and instead of them taking out, because when I saw Motley Crue on Dr. Feelgood, they had Warrant open for them.
Well, we got to tour with them. We toured on Dr. Feelgood with them quite a bit. I mean, from what I remember. But I think, you know, when we were before we got on tour, you know, it was always like, okay, Motley Crue tour is coming, and there's 7 bands up for it in the running.
Mm-hmm.
We'd get like the word, because we were on the same label, and our manager Warren was really good. He was talking to the label, and he probably might have even been talking to Motley Crue's management. He was so good, but he would tell us, hey, there's 7 bands up for it. You guys are one of them. So it was like, they were more like, you know, it's like if they took you out, you were kind of like, it was a cool thing. You really wanted to get on the Motley Crue tour thing, because if you got to tour with them, you were like, you kind of made it, you know? And so we were up, we got the tour. We got at least the first leg of it, the first half. Usually they have like, they'll tour for like, I don't know, maybe sometimes they'll tour for a year on a record, and maybe they do it, break it up into like 3 months or something. But I thought we toured a long time with them. I know other bands toured with them.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, it was us, and I can remember there was like 7 other bands. I mean, LA Guns was one of the bands, and I can remember we got the tour, but we almost didn't get it because our drummer, we first went out and we were doing a club tour, and Motley hadn't started their tour yet, but we were up for it. And then our drummer gets arrested for shipping heroin to himself.
Yeah, the famous heroin story, right? Yeah.
And we were like, our manager was so good, because as soon as he found out, he's like, you guys keep playing. He goes, use the opening band, which was Danger, Danger. We got their drummer, and we didn't miss a show. He goes, don't miss a show. He goes, I'm calling Frankie, because he had managed Quiet Riot. He goes, I'm calling Frankie Benelli from Quiet Riot. I'm buying him a airline ticket. And he goes, I'm telling him to go down to Tower Records and get your first album and your second record on cassette and fly out. So he'll be out in like 2 days. Just don't miss a show.
Yeah.
So he flew out, and then he was able to go back and say, hey, he went to like Elektra Records and to Motley Crue's management, and he was able to say, hey, it was one guy in the band. The rest of the guys are clean, and they haven't missed a show. They got Frank, and then of course Motley Crue knew Frankie Benelli.
Oh yeah, sure.
Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
So he was able to go, hey, they got Frankie Benelli from Quiet Riot playing with them now. They haven't missed a show. They're ready to go. And I think Motley kind of liked, they were into drugs. So I think they kind of like the fact, like, in some ways, like, well, one guy got busted and the rest of the guys are clean. And I think at the time they were trying to be clean.
Yeah,
so
they were. Yeah.
And I think at the time Eric was friends with Nikki Sixx. I think they might have been living together at one point, like roommates. So I think they kind of liked that we were that sleazy Hollywood band, and that, you know, we had dabbled in, you know, at least some members had dabbled in drug. I think they liked that whole kind of image, you know, like bad boy image.
Yeah.
And we got that tour, and that really helped. You know, we did play with Motley for part of it at least, and I think, I don't know, maybe the second part or middle part, maybe Warrant, like you saw Warrant.
Yeah, I think I saw the very first leg, because I saw them in December, so it would have been the record came out in like September, so it would have been probably the first leg. So you guys probably got like the second leg in that.
Yeah. What month did you see them?
December. I think it was like December 6th or that. It was one of the very first dates on the Dr. Feelgood tour.
So we were touring with them in the summertime. So we were on their second leg of the tour.
Yeah, you might have been second or maybe even third at that point. Yeah.
With a band like Motley, they were more like, they almost had to spread it out, like, to be politically correct. I guess at that time, to be fair, they almost had to say, okay, we got to take this band out, and then we got to give this band a shot. There's probably a lot of pressure on them to say, hey, you know, spread the wealth a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. Who else did you tour with on that? I think Whitesnake. We played with Whitesnake here in the Buffalo area, I think.
Yeah,
maybe later that summer.
Motley, God, we did some other stuff like Kiss. We played a lot with.
Yeah, how many shows did you play with Kiss?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, in their book, we were one of the bands that toured with them the most.
Oh, no kidding! I did not know that. What was it like touring with Kiss? So it was
great, because Kiss is Kiss, so they'd have a pretty good crowd. Not always I mean, Kiss has always been Kiss. I think forever they could probably sell out, maybe not a huge arena, but like a mid-sized, smaller venue arena.
Yeah.
Always they've been able to go out and do that, even on their kind of crappy I mean, to me, some of their 80s stuff is kind of crappy, but for us it was cool because we were big Kiss fans when we were kids, but when we saw them later, we thought they weren't very cool. I mean, we thought like they should put the makeup back on. We thought we liked the makeup, Kiss with makeup. So when we toured with them, me and Tammy, we would go out and watch them, and we'd sit way in the back and try to be anonymous where no fans would reckon. We'd be way up in the nosebleed seats, and we'd look down and we'd laugh because we're like, yeah, we just can close our eyes and the music's still pretty good, but we would rather kind of think about the makeup. So we would close our eyes and imagine we're watching them with makeup.
Yeah.
But we always kind of thought like we'd laugh because we thought like they were kind of goofy to us. Their clothing, like Gene Simmons would wear like those tight like spandex pants that you'd see like a 10-speed bicyclist ride, like real tight. And he's kind of chubby and he's wearing these tight kind of like shiny, like, I don't know what you call that material, but like spandex pants. With these like LA Gear tennis shoes, and it'd be like with like white tennis shoes, or like it's not very rock and roll. You know, how about some leather or some high heel? You know, put some cool boot, even cowboy boots if you're not going to do those. But he would do that, and have his, you know, we just thought like, and they'd talk to us sometimes and preach like, you know, Gene Simmons would preach about, you know, boring stuff. For us being kids, we're like, we want to hear about girls and sex and drugs, but don't do drugs, kids. And here's where you should put your 401k. I mean, it was just like, you know, Gene Simmons, like all business, you know. But it was great because for us too, we were young, and like all the, you know, young girls would come to the show, and we would have our pick. Basically, it was like, here's these old guys, you know, and all these young teenage girls would rather be with us, you know, so we would like have our pick of like the groupies, I guess. So
wow.
And it was fun because also too, we had the youth in our favor, where we'd go out and play and kick ass, and they'd come out and they'd be good, but we always felt like we're smoking, you know, we always felt like we were blowing them away on stage, you know.
Yeah, you probably were, because they definitely had some of those struggling years, and like you said, image wise, I mean, they did look kind of ridiculous on some of those tours, and they were more like chasing the scene, it seemed like, on a lot of those records too, instead of, you know, being the musical pioneers that they were always kind of chasing what was next.
Yeah, they were kind of like followers at the time. Yeah, exactly. They kind of chasing what was next, but at the same time, Gene Simmons is another guy like Alice Cooper. I think he brought us out because he liked us, and he saw that we were part of it. Like, they're smart enough to at least look around and go, what is the new scene? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And they recognized that LA had a scene, and Kiss brought us out. Same reason. I mean, I got to give them credit, you know, where they looked, and it was really more of a thing where Gene Simmons, I think, picked us. You know, I remember he came to the Cat House and watched us live and was hanging out. So he definitely knew, even though he was chasing, he was smart enough to at least recognize, this is something new, I'm going to be part of it. You know, we're going to grab a band and have them open, and, you know, and it was cool. And they brought out we had the middle slot. I can remember when they brought out Slaughter, and Slaughter was a great band, but they hadn't played live yet. So we were smoking them too, even though they were great, maybe even technically, I mean, maybe the guitar player was technically better, but we had that experience. We've been playing like a couple hundred shows in a row every day, rehearsed. I mean, where Slaughter was like a put together band and never played live. So we were blowing. There was a point, like I said, on the Kiss tour, where we were blowing Kiss and like the other, and whatever other band they had opening, we were blowing them off. We always felt like we were blowing them off the stage, you know?
Yeah. And that could be good and that
And
could be
we
bad
had
also.
the energy. It could be because, like, if you're blowing the headliner off the stage, they might get rid of you. You know,
Yeah,
they don't want to be
exactly
blown
right.
off the stage,
Yeah, there's like some
and
other
they could
bands might
get
not want to bring you out.
yeah. But we weren't so great. I didn't think we were at that point where we were so amazing where like they felt threatened.
Yeah.
And Kiss is Kiss. I mean, no matter how
Right.
good you are, Kiss is, they have that history to back them up. But yeah, that tour was great because we were just like, we just felt like, man, that was like the tour for us, you know?
Yeah. I want to then now mention your third record, Whipped, which came out on August 4th, 1992. At that point, the scene had kind of really changed a lot. So what was your mindset going into writing that record?
Well, the whole, you know, LA was so hot. Like I said, every label was signing bands out of LA. And then at some point Nirvana came out and I loved Nirvana. You know, I still like Nirvana. But they were a different scene. It was like, okay, there's a new scene happening from Seattle and it's totally different. They're like dressed down like grunge. They're dressed in flannels, no makeup, you know, they don't give a shit how they look. And it's very stripped down and anti, kind of like, well, there's a lot of good, you know, in our scene, there was a lot of great stuff that came out. Like I think us and Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, even out of LA, Red Hot Chili Peppers were before us, but there was a lot of good stuff that was popular in LA. But then it became kind of like a few years later, I thought it kind of oversaturated and the bands kind of weren't as good. They were just more just kind of put together like, oh, this is LA scene. Let's throw a band together. And they were chasing the scene instead of being the pioneers. So a lot of it became crap. So when Nirvana came out, it was almost anti, not so much Guns N' Roses or Poison or Us, but more anti like the stuff that came later, you know? It's hard to say, but more like some of that cheesy glam that I felt like, even though they're great bands, I would say like bands like Warrant, or even just like a lot of the East Coast stuff that came out, like Firehouse, those bands were a lot more poppier. They were great, but they're just poppier and more of like corporate rock almost. Corporate rock versions of sleazy LA metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt like I felt like when Nirvana came out, it was almost a reaction of that big corporate rock stuff like Bon Jovi, you know. And so that, you know, and there were so many great bands that came out of Seattle. So it's just a whole new scene. And like I said, we loved it. We didn't really think at the time it was gonna affect us because it was just like different music. We thought, you know, I mean, there's room for everybody, you know.
Yeah.
But the labels and MTV and radio, they were so tied in together, and it was such a corporate machine that if they decide this is the new thing, you know, they decided like this is the new product and we're not going to promote this other thing. They could make or break you. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. Back then. Yeah.
Back then they could make or break you. And that's what happened. We didn't really know it was happening. And even our third record even had some kind of grunge influence stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Tammy wrote a song called Mr. Love Dog, and Tammy wrote the song, and it was about the singer Andrew Wood from the Pearl Jam's former band called Mother Love Bone, which is a Seattle band. Yeah. And Tammy's from Seattle, and we were influenced, and we liked that, and we were even influenced, and even our third record, there was some real heavier stuff on there. But MTV and the labels and radio just decided like, well, you're LA metal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't matter. We could have played jazz. You're still LA metal. I mean, they just label you and go, we could have wrote Stairway to Heaven. It wouldn't have mattered because they wouldn't have played it. It was like, we are marketing this and we're done with that. And then they went and like in LA, like every band in LA got signed. It was the same. It was like if you were a band in Seattle, every band got signed in Seattle.
Right. Yeah.
And only the first crop of them, just like in LA, the first and the best made it, and the rest got signed and shelved and probably a tax write-off, you know?
Yeah. How devastating was that for you in the band? I mean, like 2 years prior, you were like riding on top of the world. I mean, it looked like you were going to have a super long career and be one of the most successful bands in the world. And then all of a sudden, like this comes up. I mean, that must have really been a real like kick in the ass.
What was weird is we came back like we were dropped. I mean, they dropped. What was really weird, the label dropped us when we were out on tour. It was like, why would you drop it? Why don't you at least let us finish it? It's in their interest to sell records and make money. So we're out with a record, promoting it. We're on tour opening for like Ozzy, I think. We might have been with Kiss a second time or something. But it was I remember that third record we opened for Ozzy and we opened for Kiss. But we're on tour and it was like they drop us right in while we're on tour. It's like, why would you do that? You know? Because they just were like, they were just thinking like a corporation about numbers and like not like they weren't really thinking. Their thinking, I don't think, really made sense. And what they weren't thinking of us as like artists and we're going to develop them, you know, or they weren't even thinking like these guys are human beings and have lives and like maybe have like, you know, bills to pay, or they weren't thinking anything like that. They're just thinking of like, you're just a product. And I was really devastated because even though none of our fans, and it's not like our fans just went away. Our fans didn't abandon us. Our fans didn't go, oh, we're done with you and we like this. Even if our fans like Nirvana, we didn't lose any fans. We came home and I can remember playing LA and selling out like the Palace 2 nights in a row. It was our biggest LA crowd ever. And at the same time, we're dropped. It didn't make sense. It's like, we're selling out this venue and we have more fans. We're more popular in LA than we've ever been, but we're dropped. So I can remember like after the show having like a nervous breakdown. Basically, I got off stage and I was crying, and it was like, it wasn't crying because I was so sad, but it was more like the stress of just the fact that like, this doesn't make sense. I'm happy because I just played one of my best shows. We were like on fire. Played one of my best shows to a sold out crowd.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're dropped. It's like, it didn't make sense. And I've always told people I felt like a bag of Doritos, you know, meaning we were just a product. We weren't like banned to them. We were just a bag of nacho. I always say we were nacho cheese Doritos, nacho flavor. And they decided that they're going to promote Cool Ranch flavor.
Yeah.
And so when you go into the store, you know, that was the analogy. So we were just a bag of chips, you know, it's like, and they were promoting Cool Ranch, and when you went into the store, you wanted to find nacho cheese, and all you saw was on the shelves was Cool Ranch flavor. Even though you like nacho cheese, they don't give a shit. It's like corporate, you know what I mean? It's like, this is what you're going to buy and this is what we're going to promote.
Yeah.
So it was like that. You're done. And even MTV just goes, we're only playing Nirvana. We're only playing Seattle stuff. Didn't matter if it was good or crap. It was just, they decided that. And it was like radio stations. Well, you guys are out. You guys are over. It's like, we got more fans than we ever had, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That whole time period, I mean, it's just like a head scratcher. It really honestly is. So
it was weird, you know, but the problem with it, just to go back to that time, the problem was the internet wasn't really out.
Yeah,
So
good point.
there was no promoting yourself. There was no like getting, I mean, even if the fans wanted to get in touch with you, the only way back then was through radio, MTV, and the record companies and the magazines. But as soon as and they're all intertwined and work together, and as soon as they decide they're on to Nirvana or Seattle or grunge, you're over. They just cut off every access to the fans, to you, to the fans, and the fans to you. There wasn't like any communicate. There wasn't, that nowadays you have the internet, bands could get big just on their own, do it yourself. But there wasn't any of that set up at the time. There wasn't even MP3s where you could put your music online yet.
Right.
At that time.
Yeah.
So it was like frustrating. It was kind of devastating, but I was young enough to go, okay, I'm gonna just do new stuff, or I'm gonna go get a job again, whatever, I mean, life goes on, tough it out and you know. But the thing was, all those fans were still there. The fans didn't go away. So that's why, like around 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, there was a resurgence.
Yep.
With Poison going back out, Cinderella going back out, us going back out, the Metal Sludge stuff going back out. All these bands reunited because all those fans go, we still want to see you.
Yeah.
And by then we knew, because they could communicate by the 2000s, there was the internet and email and MP3. We knew there was a huge market. All those fans were still there hungering for that 80s rock, hair metal. I don't like to say hair metal, but
you can say glam metal if you want, since that's
but that's what people call it, hair metal. So I'll say that.
Yeah.
There was a huge craving for the hair metal and sleaze metal, glam metal. There was huge, all those fans were still there and they wanted to hear that part. They were kind of tired of that whole doom and gloom, and they wanted that, they wanted to hear Poison again, party music, nothing but a good time. They really wanted that. So I think, and by then there was, like I said, the internet really changed things, changed everything,
Yeah. Now, you played with Faster Pussycat, had a reunion with some of the original members in 2015. What was it like playing again with Tammy? And
I don't know I'm not sure I played with them in 2015.
There was a show. I know that you guys did a show. You did a couple.
Oh, yeah. There was a LA Cat House. There was I don't know what you call it, like a festival.
Yeah, I think you played a couple songs, maybe not the whole show, but a couple songs at least.
Yeah, we got that was cool, because that was like a big LA thing, and the Cat House was a big part of that scene. And Ricky Rackman did like a Cat House festival, and he had all those LA bands come out and play. So Tammy, that was cool because it was such a big thing. Tammy said, I'm going to have the original members out. He could have done the opposite. He could have just said, this is Faster Pussycat now with all the new members.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. But I thought it was really cool that he did that. It was very, he didn't have to. But so the original member, most of the original members, so it was Tammy, Eric Stacy, Greg Still, me, everybody except Mark, where nobody knows where Mark is. We think he might even be he might have passed away.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, but everybody got up and we did like 2 or 3 songs, I think, maybe more, 4. It was cool. The only thing I thought is like the new members should have I thought they should have got off stage and let us have our kind of our time in the spotlight.
I agree. Yeah, but even if it was only 2 or 3 songs, yeah.
It's just 2 or 3 songs. I think if it was me, I think I would have got off. And if I was like, say, playing in a band like Dawkins as like the new guitar player, and I think if George Lynch came up, I would say, go do your thing. If he's going to be a special guest for a few songs, I would say, go do your thing. Unless you want me up there, hey, this is your band. You're the original guy. Go have your limelight for 2 or 3 songs. But when we got up, it was like the whole band, even the new guys. I just thought, but that kind of shows me that, the new guys, they're probably insecure and they don't want they want to make sure they're up there too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What is your relationship like with?
But it was
Tammy?
still cool. It was great.
I'm sorry.
It's good. It's good now. Like anything, there's a point in time where I went out and did my version of Faster Pussycat.
Yep.
Without Tammy, so he wasn't too happy. There was a point in time where there was like lawyers and all that fighting, and the he said, she said, and all that gossip and all the stuff, online. And a lot of it's not even me or Tammy. It's like people around us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People working for Tammy saying, "Oh, you should do this and fight him and get a lawyer." So there was a time when Tammy and I were fighting, but then we stopped fighting, and I had kind of done what I wanted to do. So I was just like, "Hey, I'm kind of done with Faster Pussycat. I'm playing enough here in town and doing good, pretty well.
Yeah.
That I don't really need to like fight over this thing." And Tammy only has fast. I was lucky I had a lot of stuff going on where Tammy only had Faster. So for me, I'm like, that's Tammy's thing. Give it to him,
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. That's what I eventually did. I just said, "Hey, take it. I'm done with it." And once I did that, we kind of like agreed that like brothers fight sometimes,
Yeah.
and we kind of patched things up and talked. And he said that, I mean, like interviews, I love Brent. It's like a brother, like annoying younger brother. They'll annoy you sometimes and you fight, but then you're still brothers and family. And that's how I felt too, is like, once we were done fighting, we talked a bit on the phone. We talk now, I talked to him a while ago, and we're friendly now, we say, I like him. I like most of the guys. I think for the most part, I like everybody he plays with, I have my favorites and my least favorites of the new guys, but for the most part, they're all right, and they're doing their thing, and he's doing his thing, and I'm doing my thing in Vegas. But yeah, we're cool now. But like I said, there was probably a half a year where there was probably about a half a year where we were fighting,
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the whole time frame of the, I don't know how long, we probably known each other 35 years or longer. I don't know. I haven't counted, but I mean that in that time frame, that's a short time to fight, in the big picture. But yeah, we're friendly now, which is cool. And
All right. Well, Brent, I want to thank you very much for this interview. My last question I have for you is, you have some great stories. Have you ever thought about putting out a book?
Oh yeah, I started writing one, and then I had written my whole life up to like the point to about 2004 when I moved here. I had written pretty much my whole life with a friend of mine, and I was thinking about I was planning to put it out, and then when I moved here in 2005, like right after I moved here, I got cancer, oral cancer. And that put a stop to my playing life. It put a stop to everything for a while.
Yeah, I can
Because
imagine.
I was like, I didn't know if I was going to live or die, and I had to go in for surgery. And they removed part of my tongue, and I couldn't talk. Because when I was writing the book, a lot of it was just me telling the stories and my friend writing it out. But when I had my part of my tongue removed, I couldn't talk for a few months. So that just put a stop to it. And then the doctor said I wouldn't ever be able to sing again, but I started, I taught myself to speak and then to sing again. And then I started playing, and then I got real busy here in Vegas. And then so much happened since that time, like even me going out, putting my own version of Faster Pussycat, fighting with Tammy, doing all the Sin City Center stuff here in town, touring with LA Guns, and doing so much stuff happened since then that like I have to go back and rewrite. There's many more chapters have been added to the book. And then and with that friend I had a falling out with, so that kind of put a stop to that whole thing too. So at some point I might, if I could, I'm not much of a writer, but if I ever found like a really good co-writer, I would probably put something out.
Yeah. Well, that would be. I hope you do finish it one day. I mean, I think it'd be a great read, and a lot of fans would really want to, get their hands on that and check it out. Awesome. Well, again, Brent, thank you very much for your time, and
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's good seeing you. Hopefully, I'll stop down and see you one of these days and check out one of your bands on the Vegas trip.
Yeah. The good thing is everybody comes to Vegas eventually, so it's almost like I don't have to tour anymore. It's almost like the tour comes to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's
all
cool.
right. Well, again, thank you very much. Take it easy.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.